Gear up, because this is the Fuel Your Marketing podcast, designed to accelerate sales and grow your business. Let's welcome your host, Arti Sharma.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fuel Your Marketing podcast. Today we have a powerhouse guest, Shira Abel, a tenured go-to-market leader. She's been in change management, strategic marketing, and Shira has helped companies, startups to global enterprises refine their market positioning and drive exceptional growth. I'm so happy to have with me today. Shira, welcome to the show. I'm so honored to have you on my podcast.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so talk to me a little bit, and for our audience, a little bit about who you are, and tell us something that is not on your LinkedIn.
So, I have been working, as you mentioned, in go-to-market, sales, marketing, forever now. And I occasionally teach at Berkeley. I'm a lecturer. I teach marketing for startups in the School of Engineering under the major of entrepreneurship.
Shira, brand perception is something that, I want to really dig deep today about, and just perception and marketing in general. Brand perception can either make or break a business, especially in technology companies, SaaS, where trust is everything. And so what are some of the biggest things that you've been kind of, seeing, and how you've seen perception influence customer acquisition and retention?
When you're doing a deal, especially a high value deal, how you're perceived by different people in the buying committee will end up changing the sale. And a lot of the time, the deal itself has very little to do with the price. Matter of fact, it has often nothing to do with the price. It all has to do with the perception of you, of the product, of how the company is going to be to work with, all of these things. How the people in the buying committee mesh with whoever is in the selling side and taking it through to the closed win. You're going up against two things. One, status quo. Why do we want to change it all when stasis is our preferred placement, I guess? And then if we want to change, why do we want to go with you over someone else? Who makes us the most comfortable? Where do we feel safe?
So how do you think companies can proactively shape it to their advantage?
So the perception formula is a framework that I created. And perception is equal to, the function of its heuristics, hormones, history, and heritage. And actually, the technical thing would probably be the function of perception is equal to heuristics, history, and heritage with the delta for hormones. I'm not a scientist. I'm a practitioner. The whole point is that you've got 4 H's that you want to keep in mind when you are selling to anyone. Okay. And sales is everything. That it means, sales is you are selling when you're getting somebody on your team to work with you the way you want to be, the way you want something done. You're selling when you're getting buy-in on a project. You're selling when you're selling a product, but everything is sales. If you need somebody to do something, you're selling. So with that in mind, then it's a matter of, how are you going to convince this person? And you convince them by understanding where do they come from? So that's their heritage, what's their cultural background, how did they think? A great example of this, in Russia, people who smile in photographs, they think you're stupid. In America, if you're not smiling in a photograph, they think you're mean.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we have different backgrounds. We think in different ways. Hint culture versus ask culture. And I have to make sure that I emphasize the K. Because in a video, somebody made a comment that they thought I was saying something else. So, if you're from a hint culture, people who are direct are rude. And if you are from an ask culture, people who need to be hinted to are passive aggressive. Mm-hmm. You have to know what is on the other side. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that you need to do things their way. You may want to explain, this is my background, this is how I do things. So please understand my intent is good when I do these things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It may be that you need to do that, but you need to think about the cultural background. And then perception itself is a 3-legged stool. History, hormones, and heuristics. If there's no history between you and the brand or you and the person that you're selling to or you and the person you're working with, there's no mind share. There's no perception. There's nothing. If you have no heuristic attached to you, no mental shortcut, you didn't leave enough of an impression to be thought of. If there's no emotion attached to you, you didn't leave enough of an impression to be thought of.
Wow. So it's all about understanding your buyers,
Yeah.
understanding how they see information and see the messaging. You said something phenomenal when you first started saying that, you have to know the buying committee. And I find that, people, especially when there are larger contracts there, if the ACV is higher than 150, 200,000 millions, right? Your buying committee is engaged in different stages and they have already made up their mind even before they've contacted you, right? So think about the last time you bought something online. Like for our listeners, if you think of it, the chances are you checked the reviews, you looked at the testimonials, you searched for the expert opinion, and that kind of started to shape your perception about the brand. Shaping that trust before you even made a decision is something that you could possibly control, right? I mean, imagine if your brand could actively shape that, as I said, what people see, how do they predict your involvement in their lives, or, and that could, I think, strengthen the credibility, as you said, right? You said the 3 H's. I want to bring the attention.
4 H's.
4 H's. So let's talk a little bit about those 4 H's in a little bit more detail. Can you repeat those for me?
Yeah. So heuristics, these are mental shortcuts, things like scarcity. So if you think about scarcity, the example that comes to mind to me, if we're talking about for people who don't necessarily have a background in tech, scarcity is when you're shopping on the real and you put it into the shopping cart and you've got 15 minutes before it goes back out. That's scarcity. That's implemented scarcity into the product. That is a mental shortcut. You understand you've got a limited amount of time. That is a trigger. So that will bring in a little bit of cortisol. You want to feel better. You want to have the dopamine that makes you more likely to buy it before the 15 minutes are out so that you can feel the dopamine from the purchase. The first one is heuristics, which are mental shortcuts, things like you get what you pay for, loss aversion. There are a million. The 3 others are hormones. Now, these are the neurochemicals in our body. Since I'm a practitioner and not a doctor or a scientist, I am only talking about the ones that could be triggered through marketing and sales.
And what influences that in a marketing message? Will the marketing message would influence it? Right timing when a purchaser is in the state of buying mode, or their attachment or affinity to that particular brand, or their possibly need for that particular product at the time. Would that all play a role in that?
Absolutely 100%. If it is, that everything cybersecurity is going to trigger cortisol. It first triggers cortisol and then it needs to trigger something else to make the person feel good and feel safe, right? So it's either going to be cortisol and oxytocin, or it's going to be cortisol and dopamine, or cortisol and endorphins, but there's definitely going to be starting off with cortisol. You need to stress them out a little bit to make them and then go, no, but we're going to take care of you. Why are they going with you? Well, they're probably already a little stressed. They're doing cybersecurity, or they need cybersecurity, right? They need to reduce their risk. The next one is history. And this history is specifically the history that either they have with your brand or the individual. If you're an account executive and you're selling, have you met this person previously at an event when you were with somebody else? Do you know them from something else? Have you contacted them have you commented on their on their feed multiple times in LinkedIn? What kind of history do you have any history together at all? How are you building? How are you warming them up?
It's such a critical point, because if you look at the overall go-to-market cycle, I think the history of, and that's what we call your predictive analytics of a buyer's journey. And how do you predict what are they going to buy next? How are they going to react next or respond next to any messaging or any of the other sorts? I'm going to take it to the grassroots level. Like when you imagine if you were, you're a CS leader, sometimes you would have seen emails or requests come in that, your account manager, that the previous one was better, or they loved working with them, because there's history involved with that.
There's trust.
Yeah, there's the longevity, there's relationship, and that perception could be that the next one would not be that helpful. And there's a moment of fear that comes in and that triggers all of that, right?
There's also a level of loyalty to the old person, and you feel like you're being disloyal by going to the new one.
That's right.
There needs to be a handoff where the person feels emotionally safe going to the new one.
And as they say, even in sales, right? Then you have to know, like, and trust somebody, and that's a perception that gets formed. So perception is, I think, it's prevalent in every stage of the journey, and it stays throughout the account expansion to the until the lifetime of the customer that you have. I'm taking all of this scientific approach that you've taken to the formula more to the marketing side of this for our listeners, but you're absolutely right. So talk to me about the fourth one. There's a heritage. Okay.
Heritage is how you target.
Mm-hmm.
Just as somebody who grew up, let's say I had this discussion just about a week ago, somebody who grew up in Eastern Germany and moved to the US for college, and he grew up in Eastern Germany during the time that Eastern Germany was Eastern Germany, and then the wall fell and he came to the West. His background and his way of thinking and his way of looking at everything was completely different than Americans. So he came from a different cultural background. He had to deal with that, and he had to learn how and understand how Americans think.
Yeah, so I think there's a integration of those two probably different heritages in order for you to possibly meet at a middle ground. Similarly, in any marketing message, you have to know who your audience is. When we talk about, I've seen so many workshops and so many events where people are talking about building an ICP, but ICP is not just about identifying who's your target audience, what is their industry like or whatnot. You have to understand them and know them at a deeper level, as an individual level. And you speak at workshops, and you do, you speak at events, and you've been keynoting. This, right? It's so hard to get through. So I'm really glad that you honed in the formula, because sometimes people understand the frameworks better than just a loose talk around everything and anything, right? So what else do you think, besides the 4 H's, that any marketing leader should be considering when they're kind of, creating mapping their own perception of their brand? What else should they be looking at?
Well, one thing I want to add about heritage, you also want to look at not just the cultural background, but the culture of the company that they're in and the role that they have. Because they could be from the exact same place, but if they're a marketer, their culture is going to be different than if they're a computer programmer.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I think your experiences shape who you become. So when we're talking about heritage, we're also talking about what your experiences were, what your environment was, because these perceptions are not today's perceptions. They kind of innate in our DNA as how our childhood was, how we grew up, what environment we grew up in, what kind of resources were available to us, and how
we were taught to think.
Yes, exactly. How we were shaped in terms of our conversation, through our communication and our conversations within that environment. So I'm going to take a switch here and, shift some gears here. AI is shaking up the marketing landscape, and at every level, from personalization to predictive analytics, but one thing that I'm intrigued is how AI is accelerating some of the trust building, and especially in the competitive markets. How do you see AI playing a role in helping brands establish that credibility faster?
Okay, so I'm an AI geek. I use multiple platforms. You can't see it, but I actually have a gaming monitor. I will have multiple platforms open. I will put the same prompt in them, and I will check and see the different responses. And I use it almost like that is my team in order to get all the different responses. Everything that I do, a lot of what I do is on my research. Yeah. So it works as your team, right? You could put the same prompt in all of them and get different responses. So there's different ways to go about it. But the thing is that because they're all upgrading all the time, you want to use multiple systems, or at least I do, in order to make sure you're always getting the best result. And your results will be different depending on the platform. You always have to check. You have to make sure everything is cited. And once you see the citation, you have to check the citation, because hallucinations happen. But if you're giving it data, it can go through and really give you feedback on your data.
I think AI is definitely changing how we do business. Like, people are no longer going to Google; they're going to GPT. And we just had a really decent size ACV deal, which their first inquiry was in I think one of the chat bots, one of the AI systems, and then they found a few. I'd say marketing agencies who do what they were looking for given their criteria. And they looked at us, and then they went on our website. They loved the brand, the positioning. And then we ended up kind of, engaging with them and closing the deal. It was over $100K annual contract value, 160 actually to be precise. So my question is, when we are talking about where AI is being used more and more in our day to day, how personalization will really help, and how much difficult it would become for brands and organizations to build that trust factor? Specifically, it could go either ways, right?
First of all, from what I understand, because I'm doing a little bit of research on this, can't understand JavaScript or the things that go along with it. So it is back to old school SEO. So it's about the blogs that you're putting out, all of your keywords, all of this. It will build the lists according to what it's able to find. So you need to be producing a ton of content, really being active on social. You have to know what your keywords are, connect yourself to your keywords. There are all of these things. We are back to old school SEO, which is very funny for me because I did SEO back in the day. All of that will end up getting associated with you. The other thing you need to consider and check with your brand, just like you used to have to in Google, and you probably still should, AI can collect all of the negative information on you as well. Burying it won't work.
In this world, to be real, I should say trust isn't just about technology. It's about perception. The market is crowded. There's so much noise. We have to go back to the basics to make sure that we have a great product. We service our customers really well, and we make sure that we are taking care and listening to our customers' evolving needs and coming back to those with our product teams to build more remarkable products. And at the end of the day, making sure that our positioning, our messaging is true to what we're delivering, right? So I think
you had to deliver on your brand promise. Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of personalized experiences that we're seeing now. Chatbots used to be when chatbots came in, well, everyone's like, I want a chatbot on my website, right? And of course, personalization has changed so much. Now you can have AI tools, and everyone's baking AI into their tools to say, you apply the script on my website, you would get a personalized experience. Like my team throws tools after tools at me, right? And it's a hard time to kind of evaluate everything and see what is the best fit for every other client that we work with. But trusting brands in this era of AI is becoming more and more complex, right? Predictive analytics has started to play a role. How do these all come together, especially when we're talking about AI-driven avatars? Now, are we going into this era of robots that we're going to not see any humanization? Or you still see that, as you said, back to basics, humanization will still be important? And how do you see all of that shaping up the overall perception?
Oh, it's funny. A friend of mine who's just started a new startup, he's Israeli, and in real life, he has quite the accent. But he's doing these videos on LinkedIn, and they're scripted videos, and the accent is American. It's not him. So I'm watching it going, this feels so wrong to me, but then I know what he sounds like, and not everybody does. I understand why he's doing it that way, but the second somebody sees him at a conference and speak in person, they're going to be like, wait a second, not the same guy. Their trust will go down. So either he's not going to be speaking anywhere that isn't with the AI, which is could be the way he goes. Totally possibly. A lot of sales in the beginning of a startup are founder-led sales. So I understand why he would want to do, and building the cult of personality on LinkedIn is an absolute method of growth. It works really well. We've seen it with many. This is a valid method of growth for a startup. With that in mind, can you put an AI in place for you? My personal opinion is to be doing things. You have to be transparent with it. People already expect it with the AI chatbot. They do not expect it when they're talking with you one-on-one in a meeting.
As you said, we're going back to basics. Humanization cannot be underrated. It's such a big part of building and establishing that trust. But I think as more and more technology gets smarter with sentiment analysis, AI avatars can do that. Maybe there's more predictive analytics available in the back end based on the conversations. The data becomes more richer. I think AI-driven bots and AR-driven avatars are going to take a little bit more center stage. We're already talking about it. Something that we need to start testing, embracing, in my opinion, but that cannot be the be-all and end-all of your overall, I think,
it doesn't build real relationships. If the person who's commenting on the post in LinkedIn is obviously an AI, I don't want to respond to that.
Yeah, no,
I do this.
I hear what you're saying. I think they can be part of the workflow to maybe qualify a particular, opportunity that comes through the pipe. But I think there is a lot of ways you could use it to accelerate the experience of the customers, but it could be a hit or a miss. It could backfire also if it's not strategically thought through or used, but it's a crappy version of that, of you as a human.
Yeah.
If it's a crappy version of you, it could really backfire. I think that's what we need to understand and kind of use it. Now, I want to go back to the social proof conversation that we were having, right? It's been such a critical factor in shaping perception, but AI is taking it to the next level. As you said, somebody else is commenting, or, and I said about sentiment analysis. I mean, we can't deny social proof has been, a staple for marketing for decades, right? Word of mouth, testimonials, reviews all play a huge role in building the trust, especially with search engine optimization. But AI is taking social proof to the whole new level as well. And we're talking about, as I said, real-time sentiment analysis. So do you want to speak to your take on how brands can leverage AI-driven social proof, if at all, to strengthen their positioning?
Okay. So on the AI side of social proof, in my opinion, most of the time it's going to be used in terms of research on a company or a brand or a person. That has to do with how transparent, again, are you with the information that you have. If you have been caught doing something you shouldn't, and there are bad reviews buried because you hired an SEO firm in order to bury them, they will come back up now. If you did not handle them properly, you're going to have to handle them now, because stuff can't be buried with AI. The social proof now is in-person relationships. It's the reason why events have come back, and not just come back, but have gotten bigger and more important, because I don't trust everything I'm going through a website. I want to meet the person in person, and it's that trust you need to build up. So it's almost that AI has made in real life social proof more important than it's ever been before.
I agree with you. And I think part of that is because we've been in lockdown and hybrid mode, and in so much that I think as humans, we love to feed off of each other's energy. As we're social creatures. And I think there's a lot that we could do possibly through technology, but I think there is definitely that element of humanization, that one-to-one conversation, that face-to-face conversation that cannot be denied.
But also the level, I mean, now it is so much easier to put together a mailing list, an email list, and get them with a million things, or have a bot automatically connect with all these people on LinkedIn, and it's not actually you. So when it's not you, and it's obvious that it's not you, so it depends. There's different levels of this. But if somebody could tell, you stop reading the messages. You get so many from so many people. I don't read emails that aren't from people I know. I don't read anything I haven't automatically signed up for. And if somebody signed me up to something, I report it automatically, or I just, block it. We're more likely to not trust anything automatically that comes to us.
And I think that's where the trust and that perception of your brand comes all full circle, because at the end of the day, you have to marry the two very strategically, because if this is not woven correctly, AI is definitely going to play a role. So my last question to you would be, if you could give one piece of advice to tech founders, SaaS founders looking to refine their brand positioning, their marketing positioning in 2025, what would that be?
I would have them using the perception formula in order to understand their framework better, understand who they're messaging, and create messaging that resonates and pushes the right triggers in order to get the deal done.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Shira. This has been such an insightful conversation. I think the perception formula comes in really handy in those instances. So thank you very much for sharing that so generously with us. For my fellow event producers, if you're listening to this podcast, please know that Shira is looking to, speak at events, share this goodness with others at the executive level. She's happy to do workshops, and also she's done several that have been very successful. So I highly recommend Shira to be on the stages. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening in today. And if you found today's discussion valuable, make sure to subscribe to the Fuel Your Marketing podcast and share this with your network. Thank you once again, Shira, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Fuel Your Marketing podcast. For more episodes, visit www.fuelyourmarketing.ca.